Why should I care about this? Because it's my birthday, and if I want to yap on about this, I'm gonna yap on about it. Now, if you'll excuse me, allow me to drink my cup of copium. So let's talk about Mick Schumacher and what he's been up to, and so far so good. That was the 4-word summary the German driver provided to the press, but I'm quite certain some folks will be looking at this site and getting your phones of doubt out in the ready. Isn't that going against everything his father Michael said that one time, that he considered IndyCar inferior and dangerous and he wouldn't touch it with a 20-foot barge pole? Yes, you are fair to bring that up. That is something that Michael did say back in the day, but that was back in the 2000s when IndyCar was undeniably a whole lot sketchier than it is today. Yes, it's certainly incredibly tense because whenever I look at IndyCar and them going around like that, even if it's around an oval, you just think, I'm always stressed out watching IndyCar because they're having to go around that at full chat. But then I'm reminded of a quote that Michael also said that his son Mick brought up that, and I'm paraphrasing here, that Schumachers are faster when they can see their wheels. Basically, they are really good for open wheel racing, and IndyCar might be Mick's best bet. It certainly is, I think, Mick Schumacher coded. But wait, why are you talking about IndyCar law? You should be talking about Formula 1. Well, yes, I do talk about Formula 1 a lot of the time, but I do dip in and out of various other series when I get the chance. Yeah, I am kind of limited when raising a toddler. I want to be present for them, of course, because, you know, they are my flesh and blood. But I can sort of bring it back around to Formula 1 because the pathway toward IndyCar could easily be, in Mick's own interpretation, a valid way of getting back into Formula 1 should it come to it. Or if it doesn't, this might be a really nice stopping off point for many, many years. After all, IndyCar drivers, such as Helio Castroneves and Takuma Sato, can easily succeed in the category going into their 40s. There is longevity in it. Allow me to provide you some of Mick's words for your consideration. Ahem. I don't think that this blocks the way back to Formula 1. From what I've read so far, there are quite a few rumours sometimes around people from here, IndyCar, going back over there, Formula 1. Frankly, it's a great championship. 17 races. I'm still young, so I still want to race as much as I can. Again, I think the people really live mid-sport here. I like their mentality of the driver being the main part of the team and trying to drive that team forwards. My target the last couple of years was always to go back to Formula 1. Unfortunately, that option hasn't quite opened up this year, and years previous to that, so he has admitted it's been a bit of a slog. So at some point else I want to see. I want to race again in single-seaters, and therefore IndyCar is a great one. Hearing what all the other drivers have said so far about IndyCar kind of led to actually making it happen today. Well, I mean, he isn't wrong in that regard. There is a lot more chatter about IndyCar drivers going over to Formula 1 than there has been in previous decades. I mean, you've only got to look at all of the bump around Colton Herta going from IndyCar to Formula 2, then maybe to Formula 1. Then, of course, you've got all of the stuff that's happening with Alex Palou and the supposed McLaren deal that was not forthcoming, and now Piastri's at the centre of it all again. We all thought that was done and dusted in 2022. So suffice it to say, with the outcome of all of that is that we didn't get Colton Herta in 2023, and all we got out of it was, well, Nick De Vries. At least he's having a good time in Formula E. We didn't get the best of that situation, or the best of that world. Here, though, that might be the beginning of a trend differently. So what Mick is saying here, I think, is quite valid. Equally, he could have gone off to Super Formula in Japan. That's a formula which has been gaining recognition internationally, and respect from the current spec of car, with Lawson himself deeming that it was vital for him preparing for Formula 1 action when he subbed in for Daniel Ricciardo. And some of the youngsters like Oliver Behrman got to sample it in the winter. And let's not forget, Antonelli was meant to be trying out a Super Formula car, but then got pulled out at the last minute due to some kind of stomach bug before the Abu Dhabi F2 Grand Prix weekend. I personally think, though, it was down to the fact, well, Toto believed he wasn't going to get much more out of F2, so probably best to bench him so that means he could fully focus on the young driver test at the following week. That does make sense, and quite frankly, Kimi Antonelli was going to get the super license points anyway, so there was no point to put him in that car and then put him in our car. And also, I think the idea of racing in America all season long would be something that really appeals to Mick's background, because one thing is for sure, the Schumachers love America. They own a ranch there. His sister Jean is a pro horse rider, and Mick's grown up with a touch of cowboy culture. IndyCar fits that vibe, and the Schumacher name already plays well in the States for obvious reasons, and yes, the family name has opened doors, it always does. But the real pitch from his management has been that Mick is a grafter, a blue-collar worker, who got caught in Haas politics and Ferrari frostbite, which, as has been laid bare with Ferrari the way it is right now, it's probably for the best that he's not within the Ferrari fold right now. He's been able to redirect his efforts and improve his kudos and recognition within the motorsport, even if the casual Formula One fan has proven just to remember, ha! He split car in two! He's been able to prove himself in world endurance with Alpine, dab-hand in qualifying, certainly a good team worker, and also probably very much carrying many people within the number 36 car. Although I would suspect that the Valkyrie is giving everyone there a bit of the heebie-jeebies. But what I'm trying to say here is that Mick has done a lot of efforts and has proved positive that he is not a legacy hire. He's not a guy who is riding on a name carrying a lot of money. Isn't that right, Lance? Lance? Lance! 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 Oh, no, wait, no, he can't hear us. My point is that Mick's course correction into IndyCar could be a smart bet if he was hoping to get back into F1 at all, and even if he doesn't, he might have found a racing series which would tick most of his boxes. It's not a done deal, of course, it's not like he signed a contract to race there next year or anything, at least not yet, but it's certainly become an option which Schumacher is very much open to. Especially considering that the plum of maybe going over to Cadillac fell through, with a supposed reserve role gig alongside some duties over in the Cadillac World Endurance team, that completely disintegrated. It does seem very much to be appealing to Schumacher that he would dedicate an entire season to IndyCar, 17 races, instead of maybe sticking around the Alpine WEC team for yet another season, maybe getting a few more podiums, maybe seeing what happens, especially if Aston Martin run rings around them. There seems to be a lot more going for what might appeal to Schumacher's work ethic. That maybe whilst he does appreciate and enjoy working as part of a collective, he might want to actually sample what his father Michael got to have at Ferrari and being at the centre of a particular car. So yeah, I can imagine that maybe Alpine will be doing all they can to make sure that the German doesn't leave their ranks. He's a very important part, albeit one of many. But he has been carrying that team for Hyperpole especially, and I think he will only continue to improve if he does remain there. I'm quite certain that even if Alpine has no room for him, that any other World Endurance team will have him back if he decides just to have a quick dip at IndyCar and then come back to Europe. And we all remember that McLaren were touting a supposed big star that they had in mind to test out their World Endurance car. That could easily be Mick Schumacher, since he has done some TBC testing for McLaren as part of him being a Mercedes reserve, and then of course some private ones. And again, the whole idea of the driver being right at the centre of it all is very appealing, that he can actually be taken seriously, which is something that may or may not have been afforded to him over at Haas. And to me, I think this is a work ethic that really would appeal over at IndyCar, since it very much is a mucking in sport, as in, we all do this together, there is no big ego here, and you've really got to pull your weight. I think Mick is more than happy to do that, and his management team have been very much leaning on that, really trying to appeal to Cadillac with the backing of Andretti, who very much knows about how IndyCar operates, really trying to tug at that particular heartstring. It wasn't quite enough, but I think for the likes of Rahal Letterman Lanigan, the team which he tested for, oh, that might be enough. Oh, already, the social media metrics from IndyCar, oh, no, they want this to happen. And I think it really helped that he actually got to test out an IndyCar rather than just signing some prize deal with no testing at all, only testing after the fact, then maybe burning his toes or something like that. No. So far, everything is going as I think it should do. I mean, I'm not an IndyCar enthusiast. I'm not really au fait with it as much as I am with Formula One. But from what I've seen over the last few years especially, this does seem to be how things operate. So yeah, we got to talk about that test. Again, I'm not super familiar with IndyCar, but the test seemed to prove positive around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But I must point this out to you, that this was a very curated test, and upon reflection, didn't really test the limits of what IndyCars can and do operate on. As in, this wasn't around the Indianapolis oval configuration. Mick has yet to do that. It was not taking place on a road circuit, where it can get incredibly bumpy and really test the limits of the suspension of an Indy car, as well as the fact that those cars do not have power steering. They are very, very tough to operate. So let's just say that the relative billiard surface of the road spec of Indianapolis Motor Speedway, that was a relatively easy bet. But to be fair, this is a test, just a bedding in period. It's a guide, so I just thought I'd point that out there and just make sure that, I'm not completely hooked on the copium. So whilst Mick's apparent ease of racing said machinery was evident, it wasn't exactly a school of hard knocks for him considering what IndyCar can do. But despite that, the fact he supposedly had a fun time testing that car and showed little difficulty is still noteworthy, especially, again, since these cars don't have power steering whereas F1 cars do. And what that actually means in physical terms is wild. IndyCar drivers wrestle a steering wheel that can generate several dozen kilos of torque mid-corner. Basically, when you're trying to steer the car, it's like you're trying to steer a trolley of bricks at nearly 200 miles an hour. And when you stop to think about it, that is very similar to the kind of cars that his father Michael was racing in Formula 1 when power steering had yet to grace that particular sport, whereas now it is actually commonplace. In that it is very much old school. That is a comment that Mick used to describe IndyCar, and the entire situation and atmosphere around it as very old school, very traditional, very much back in the day, not nearly as clinical as he would describe Formula 1. Yes, it is the pinnacle of motorsport, Formula 1, but IndyCar still very much has its heart rooted back in the olden days, and it really wouldn't surprise me at all that in the future, maybe Max Verstappen might have a test in an IndyCar as well, because I think that Max would respect Mick's take on that. It makes sense why they were good friends for so long, family friends and all. This is also something that Mick has been planning for the last couple of years, just waiting for the right opportunity and for the right connections to come good. This is not some kind of spur-of-the-moment thing that was orchestrated on his part, his management's part, after the whole Cadillac discussion fell through and he's thinking, oh, I've got to find something, anything. No. This has just been a long time coming. Him stating that he had been talking with very high-profile IndyCar members, this all coming from a very detailed article via Alpha Motor and Sport, as well as Racer, and motorsport.com. The test Mick conducted was important for him to decide whether or not a move stateside would be worthwhile as a holding pattern or mainstay. But whatever happens, Schumacher did comment that if he were to do this, it would be for all 17 races, not for him to do some kind of Indy 500 cameo and then that was your lot. And quite frankly, I think that is for the best, because we did see a major uptick in performance when he dedicated himself entirely this season for the Alpine A424, instead of him playing double duty with that particular project, as well as him being the main Mercedes reserve driver, as well as the potential reserve driver of all of the Mercedes customer teams. And based on his own initial impressions of IndyCar, he had fun. He didn't find any difficulty. He didn't find the lack of power steering all that bothersome. The only major thing he had a bit of an issue with was transitioning himself out of the pit lane and onto the track, just trying to work his pit exit etiquette. Okay, drinking game. Whenever law stands Mick, take a drink. Sorry, I was slacking there. As for the times themselves, they weren't bad apparently. 3rd out of the 7 in attendance, only behind established drivers like Alex Rossi and NXT member and fellow F2 veteran Dennis Hauger, both of which had plenty more experience than the German. And times might have been faster still had the timing loop been working properly throughout the day. And of course the team in question, Rahal Letterman Lanigan, needs to have a seat ready for whoever gets it, be it Schumacher or otherwise. But an additional from the publication Racer was quite a notable tell as to the desire of Team RLL for the exposure, which IndyCar themselves milked for all that it was worth, going as far as superimposing Mick's Dallara Honda machine next to his father's Ferrari over the brick-clad finish line. As soon as I saw that, I'm thinking, oh my god, IndyCar, you're not even hiding it. You really want this to happen, and something tells me that you are going to make this happen as some kind of means to really push yourself into Europe. Well, I mean, especially since the Prema project has pretty bitten the dust. In fact, there are plenty of rumours suggesting that that entire team is up for sale. But anyway, I would like to cut out an excerpt from The Racer's article from Marshall Pruitt for your consideration, which really emphasises that this was not something that Mick's team put together on the last minute sort of affair. This was orchestrated. RLL has gone to great lengths to arrange and fund the test for Schumacher, bring Honda Racing Corporation US into the effort to provide valuable time on its DRL, that I think is a driver in loop system, and to surround the son of 7-time F1 champion Michael Schumacher with all of the mechanical and engineering talent RLL has to offer, with technical director Todd Malloy, race engineer Yves Touron, and engineering R&D leader David Cripps in attendance on Monday. Team co-owner David Letterman even said he wanted to stop by, which almost never happens for a test. It's too early to say whether Schumacher will join Graham Rahal and Louis Foster next season, but it's clear that both sides have broached the subject as a possibility, if the test and terms meet their expectations. Yeah, so there you go. Mick didn't have to buy his way into a test. All of this makes me think that RLL treated this like a genuine recruitment push, not some kind of folly on Schumacher's part. They funded this team the whole thing. They brought Honda into the mix as well with their own equipment. And they got these senior crew members on side to actually see it, and even their celebrity owner took an interest in a test session. He was able to prove that, hey, he's not all that far off against the faster test members. He wasn't seconds off the pace. He gave it his all. He seemed quite level-headed. He didn't milk it. It was IndyCar themselves who milked it. Schumacher himself was like, yeah, I like the car. It's pretty easy. I liked it. I had fun. Yeah, let's see if it goes anywhere. He wasn't going like, oh yeah, I was born for this. I was made for it. Oh, IndyCar, love me, baby. He had fun. He liked the old school nature. And all of this language and rhetoric surely appeals to all the Americans out there. If you're American, did what Mick Schumacher say about IndyCar and his test really make you feel like, yeah, I vibe with that guy? Now, if you're an IndyCar fan, just get your foam of doubts at the ready here, but is it quite rare for IndyCar teams to bankroll tests with drivers? Is it? Because I can imagine that most drivers would have to bring their own money to these particular tests, as this could be a source of income for these operations, since, well, there isn't much money involved in operating an IndyCar team, as well as it being much cheaper than a Formula One operation. But it does make me think that Rahal Letterman Lanigan is planning something. They want this to happen. They just needed Mick to show he had the performance to justify their thoughts. And I think the performance box got a major tick in that regard. But it seems like from the Racer article especially that both parties, that being RLL and Mick, had broached a 2026 deal if the test and terms align, and if Schumacher felt like IndyCar was a worthwhile change of pace. It does feel like a real offer is being discussed, but it needed the times on the board first before going any further. And quite frankly, I do think this will go ahead, especially for the fact that it is with a well-established team and not with something like Prema, who, again, according to rumours, their commitment to IndyCar after just 1 year in the sport might be called into doubt. And I don't need the foam for that. So basically what I'm trying to say here, and I don't think I need the cup of copium for this, is that this was a proper audition with courtship intent. They were wooing Mick, and Mick was going like, let's have a second date. I don't think this is some kind of one and done thing during the off season of IndyCar to try and drum up some hype before the long dark tea time of winter before you start off again in March. And I think if the terms are realistic and that this team can provide him a competitive car, so that means he's not completely off the back, Mick will probably take at least 1 year in IndyCar over another season in World Endurance. Why? Well, it's down to the language that Schumacher said, that he really likes the idea of racing open wheelers, that he feels like he could be quicker in them, and that maybe IndyCar might be the best stepping stone available to him instead of doing World Endurance where it's a closed cockpit with 4 wheels that are enclosed, or going to Super Formula in Japan, where even though it is improving on an international stage, it's still got some ways to go. It is very much a domestic series with people overseas going like, oh, what's that? Oh, okay. And as I alluded to earlier with the old school vibe, his piece with motorsport.com excerpts much more of that having more races, 17 to WEX 8, meant there were more opportunities perhaps to get out there and go for it rather than spend weeks in a simulator and planning out stratagem for a multi-hour marathon that could finish after just a couple of corners if everything goes wrong, every couple of months. They basically have their own qualities, but IndyCar seems to track better with the German. I just get the impression that at this moment in time, Mick wants to really gel with an organisation which is really down to earth, family run especially, that just simply want to get the best result possible. They all band in together. There's a sense of unity where he is at the centre of it all, and they're all aiming for one common goal. The narrative seems to be really playing with the German right now, that it's a case of rebuilding. It very much tracks with the emphasis that his management team have been trying to do. Hey, he didn't survive in F1 for that long, but Look at what he's doing in World Endurance. He's committed himself to Alpine, he's a hard worker, and you want hard workers when you're setting yourself up, so why don't you give it a go with Mick? All of which with relatively straightforward technology when you compare itself to Formula One with all of the trappings and politics there. And sure, with brand new cars in IndyCar, it could get a little bit more complex, but right now it seems a lot more straightforward and a little bit more, as he says one more time, old school. And that is a very big debate within Formula One at the moment, with the idea of racing being lost in the midst of entertainment. And whilst I'm okay to adapt to it, and I'm showing that I'm not some old curmudgeon which goes, back in the day, it is not the same. We were saying this in 2000, that, this one's not the same as it was back in my day. It happens. I'm pretty sure that people in 1980 were going, no, this is not like it was back in the day in 1960. People in 2040 will be going, no, it's not like it was back in the day of 2020. But look, Mick had fun out there, and that's what matters. Indy is gaining traction internationally, and his name could be an asset for it, and he too could get the best out of it since it's an open wheel series within a country which he loves. And it could provide a very important shot in the arm regarding his reputation with people who simply vibe with open wheels. Granted, there is plenty more to go in terms of development. This was a first-time foray, with Automotor and Sport also calculating that based on Mick's lap times from the test around Indianapolis, his best time would have been good on the day for the actual race, 23rd out of 27. That's not front-running pace, but nor is it woefully off the back. Yeah, it just shows there's some way to go, but it means that the only way is up, really. It's not the case of, oh, okay, we now have to fill in 2 seconds between 27th and 26th, and then maybe we can go for 25th. No, this is going, okay, top 20 time, top 10 time, top 5 time. Yeah, it all progresses. And again, IndyCar drivers can go well into their 30s, and in some cases with their 40s. So there is plenty of time for improvement. But if you couldn't tell, I must again declare my bias. I am a Mick stan. And even though I am using every fibre of my being and this cup to make this move happen, when you actually stop and put this down and think about it, given where he is wanting to ultimately get back to, Formula One, this does seem, IndyCar, a viable solution. IndyCar might suit his temperament. Hands-on, hard-working, refreshingly human. The irony is delicious, though, since this is the series his father once dismissed, and it might be the one where his son finds his stride. If he signs, though, I'll be watching. And if you still don't believe me, then believe this. I must stress this out to you. This IndyCar outfit paid for Mick to be here. They wanted this to happen. Mick did not come begging and gave them a bag of cash. Honda helped out with this. IndyCar have been marketing this up the wazoo. And what helped all of that pomp and circumstance is that Mick's time was the 3rd fastest behind Rossi and Hauger, who already have plenty of experience within that field. This is not some kind of podunk outfit who allows Mick Schumacher to lap 6 seconds behind everyone else, but just that means he got some time in a car just to provide him a little bit of, interesting fun. And I think what it also says is this is the beginning of a charm offensive, that Mick is here to show America, first and foremost, that he is wanting to get involved in this, that if he gets a seat, he will dedicate his life and soul toward it. He's not going to half-ass this, and I think that that kind of work ethic will go down very well in rural America. And I think if you just strip the name away from all of this, I think the personality of the guy is something that everyone will really abide by. And think about it. If Mick does land a full-time IndyCar seat, it would mean that every Schumacher generation to touch top-tier motorsport, father, uncle, son, has done it in completely different continents, engines, and eras. But it can easily transcend different racing cultures. That if you stick a Schumacher in a car, that they can just go, oh yeah, I can make this work, and then just watch it unfold. It's really worth taking a fresh look at Mick. And once again, he didn't crash it. And now, for the sake of the bit, you gotta commit. And I think you should take a fresh look at this video, or a first look. YouTube and I think you will like it. I'll see you over there.